The First Amendment is nothing but, honestly, a relatively weak tool.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of our one-on-one interview series. Today, I'm joined by Margie Phelps. Margie, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm Margie Phelps. I'm a member of Westboro Baptist Church and one of the attorneys for the church.
So, Margie, what is the Westboro Baptist Church? What do you all believe in, and how did you become a member?
So this church has been here since the year I was born, and I'm 66 years old now. So it is a congregation of Bible believers. We're independent of any religious organization because none of those are authorized in the scriptures. And we are a group of people who read the Bible, believe the Bible, obey the Bible, strive to serve God according to the Bible. About 30, by now, maybe 35 years ago, we began, because of a series of events in our hometown, to go to the streets and pleading with the nation. We started in the city, it went to the state, it went to the nation, it's gone to the world, to put away proud sin and to obey God, and otherwise to have temporal and eternal consequences. And I became a member when I was a teenager. I grew up in the church, but there's no forced membership just because you're a member of the family. The passage of time, you either make a profession of faith and determine you're going to live and walk orderly according to the scriptures, or you don't. I did, and the rest is history, as they say.
So why did you all decide to start protesting the funerals of AIDS victims and soldiers who were killed overseas?
Well, respectfully, that's not quite the right question. To briefly give the path, even as a child here in my hometown, it was clear that we had a belief system that was rapidly becoming not in sync with our community and with society in this country. So even in grade school, I recall that we wouldn't participate in the holidays that are not scriptural, like Christmas and Easter and Halloween and all that. And I grew up in a fairly wealthy part of the city, and so the power brokers of the city had their children in school with us, and it was clear that they didn't agree with us. My dad was an attorney. He was a civil rights attorney. He participated in the reopening of Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, and that resulted in acts of violence against my siblings, some of my siblings, and like shooting out the windows of our station wagon, that'll age me, and things like that. So there was always a reaction locally. So against that backdrop, there's a park about a half mile from where we live. And my dad would go with some of the grandsons and ride bikes in that park. And they would be openly accosted by homosexuals. So with time, as that kept occurring, we went to the city dads to ask that they do something. And to put it bluntly, all hell broke loose. That's when we began to understand that the churches and the leaders had apostatized. So that prompted us to start picketing at that park with little dinky signs that said things like "gays in bushes, watch your kids." And the entire religious community landed on us with every possible strategy to try to shut us up, imperiling our jobs, threatening to take our children, passing laws against us, sending mobs to surround and attack us, everything you can imagine. And after about a year, it dawned on us, this is bigger than Gage Park. So we started picketing churches. And then with time, we started picketing pride parades. And then with time, we started picketing high schools. After a bit, we started traveling the nation until we were in every state of the nation. We went with these signs. Time passed, and because of the proud sin of America, this nation was dragged into a bloody war, which they had no business being in. And next thing, their fruit, the fruit of the land, started coming home mangled in body bags. And for about a year, we watched while they held massive patriotic pep rallies outside of those funerals and memorials. It was outrageous. And we finally said, this can't be. Someone's got to go say something. So we didn't picket funerals. We picketed pep rallies. I mean, you'd go to one of these events and there'd be 500, 1,000, 1,500. One time I went to one and the bodies were a mile long, piled up with flags, music boxes, signs, revving motorcycles. And we went to say this, chanting USA, chanting God bless America. We would say, this is not a blessing. This is a curse. They're dying for your sin. So that's how that happened.
Do you regret any of the more inflammatory rhetoric the Westboro Baptist Church has used? And if so, why? And if not, how would you argue the value of such rhetoric in the marketplace of ideas?
So first of all, it's not up to them whether we get to say these words. It's up to God. He alone owns the keys and the doors. And if he opens a door of utterance, it's going to happen. If he closes it, it's not. The First Amendment is nothing but, honestly, a relatively weak tool. Because parenthetically, what people need to understand is the First Amendment is only as valuable as the enforcement by the man or woman in uniform on the ground in the moment. And they have scores of ways to thwart your speech when they don't like it. So it's a mistake for us or anyone else to put too much stock or hope in that feeble First Amendment. But nevertheless, it's a tool that the Lord gave us. Second, it's going to redound to the eternal shame of this country, of the Supreme Court, and every person who says that the words that articulate the holy law of God are not worthy in the marketplace of ideas of America, that's supposed to be a Christian nation. Third, our language is not inflammatory. It is carefully articulated words from the scriptures reduced to a few readable signs. Every one of them is carefully thought through. We cite the passages in the scriptures, but it seems inflammatory when you raise whole generations that you swaddle and coddle in proud, self-indulgent sin. We have raised a generation or two or three now to believe that they can mock the standard of God, they can treat the Bible as merely suggestive, and if it makes you happy, you just go on ahead and do it, and God is obligated to love you and let you into heaven anyway, although we're not quite sure God even exists. Now, that's how they've taught children, and they've done it by parents. They've done it by preachers. Shame on them. They've done it by teachers, and they've done it by leaders. And so the end result today is a violent, confused bunch of young people. Just read the headlines and you'll see that. There's nothing inflammatory about our words. It feels like you've been punched in the solar plexus when you see them because you've been lied to about God, and I'm using you generically. You've been lied to about God. So we wouldn't say the words if we were going to regret them. So of course we're not going to take back the words. And one of the principal reasons that we represented ourselves at the United States Supreme Court is so that no one would get up there and apologize for God. So that's my answer to the allegation of inflammatory. And I'll tell you one more thing about that. I've had more people than I could possibly count come up to me and say, well, I don't disagree with your message, just how you word it. To which I say two things. then you go make a sign that you think words it right, and you warn this nation that is sprinting to its destruction, because that is your duty scripturally as much as it is my duty. And second of all, let me not bury the lead. Spoiler alert, there is no way that you can word, phrase, or say, put away proud sin to proud sinners and they don't become angry. I've watched many, many videos where someone just goes out and says, don't abort your baby, and people surround them and hit them and steal their sign and vilify them and mock them. There's no way to say it that doesn't make a proud sinner angry. So when you've got a nation whose policies from stem to stern are proud sin, there's no way to word it. You just have to pack up and go home. And we can't do that. We have a duty to God and our fellow man.
So you've also desecrated the American flag before as a form of protest. What would you say to the people who think it should be illegal to desecrate the American flag?
Yeah. Well, we're not the ones who desecrated the American flag. The 4,000 unborn babies murdered every day in this country, that desecrates the American flag. Policies and laws, from the school system to the local laws, to the state laws, to the federal laws, that treat proud, horrific, ruinous sin as a civil right, that desecrates the flag. Sticking our nose and starting up bloody warfare all over the world, that desecrates the American flag. America, known to all the nations of the world as a nation that will exalt adultery, fornication, idolatry, transgenderism, sodomy above everything. Scorched earth. They'll give go of everything in this country so they can pursue those proud sins and force them on the citizens of this nation. That desecrates the American flag. Shootings that we can't count any longer. Absolute free-for-all with weapons all over this nation. That desecrates the American flag. Violence in our streets daily today. That desecrates the American flag. Getting children in a classroom and requiring them to learn about sex, sodomy, holding those events where the drag queens read books to them, that desecrates the American flag. The American flag is a laughing stock in this world. We didn't desecrate the American flag. We expressively used the American flag to make all of those points that I just made. It is an idol. It's a piece of cloth, but it is an idol. And people are prepared. They are, as the scriptures call it, mad, as in insane, upon that idol. If that flag is so stinking powerful that you will worship it instead of worshiping God, I'm pretty sure that flag can take care of itself.
What role should Christianity play in American society and government?
I need to make a distinction here. Unfortunately, the term Christian or its iterations like Christianity are so misused until they don't have right meaning any longer. I am reluctant in the public airwaves to say I'm a Christian anymore, because a Christian obeys Christ, follows Christ. One of our signs is friends of Christ obey him. Several of our signs are, quote, Christians caused, and then fill in the blank, tranny sin, same-sex marriage, on and on. Because the millions of people who call themselves Christian today are no more Christian than a Buddhist, because they don't follow the laws of God. The demographic with the highest rates of divorce and remarriage in the world are Christians. Although Christ said divorce and remarriage is adultery. One man, one woman for life. And you know that's a joke in our society. Christians embrace homosexuality, even if they only do it because they've got pews and pulpits filled up with people thrice and more on 3, 4, 5 spouses. How can they, with any moral authority, tell homosexuals they can't marry if by no other means they enable homosexuality and all the lesser included? So what role that mess should play in government is none. So when you've got a cursed religious system that's wrong in every way, a cursed government full of wicked leaders, wrong in every way, no policy they form is going to prevail because they have left the Bible and forgotten God. And the scriptures say the nation that forgets God will be turned into hell. On the other hand, a righteous government would follow the laws of God. And of a truth, no human government ever has, not even this so-called Christian nation. The first time there will be a government on this earth that follows the law of God and that is righteous will be when Christ returns in power and glory and establishes his kingdom on this earth and then proceeds to have his millennial reign.
So I want to give you a moment to sort of get whatever you want out there, to sort of ways people can get in touch, learn more, sort of a free speech moment. So Margie, go ahead. This is your free speech moment.
Thank you for that. And thank you for having me on. And so I think people know how to get in touch with us. I don't think there's a problem there, but I would make these few closing points. This nation is ready and probably will to repeal the First Amendment if that's what it takes for them to have policies of proud sin. They will give up their civil liberties so they can have their fornication, adultery, murder, and idolatry. Call that a prediction, call it a concern, but that's where I see this nation heading. So what I suggest to anyone watching this video is that they come out from the sins of America, sanctify yourself, get a Bible, read it, obey it, and watch for the return of the King of Kings. It's probably not far off. Just obey God for peace and blessing in this life and in eternity.